Warhammer Online, the home of wargaming.
Hello everyone and welcome to Monday Musing 61. It's been a long road. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I am joined by Ralph and Coleman. Hey guys.
Hey up.
Hi Phil.
Hey up.
And everybody else.
So we're trialing some new technology. Why not? We've had some problems with the group chats over the last few weeks. Anything from Coleman having to say beep every 30 seconds to Ralph not looking his optimum through his data capacity. So we think we've found something new and hopefully it will work. So feedback please. I know there's a blank window over there. I was in a bit of a rush. I haven't had time to put anything in there. I'll get round to it as the show goes on. But before we go any further, what is tonight's show about? Tonight's show is simply what kind of are we hoping for from Games Workshop for the rest of 2019. So this was driven by, I think, a whole bunch of stuff that we've had on the community site recently, a whole bunch of leaks, a whole bunch of sneak previews and hints and tips about what's coming along. And we were having a bit of an offline chat over the weekend of kind of saying, you know, are we going to see a Fire Slayer, you know, battle tome in its entirety, or is it going to be part of a Grand Alliance? Will we see orcs in their entirety, or orcs or part of a Grand Alliance? And we were kind of talking about Grand Alliance inside Age of Sigmar, and then conversation turned to 40k as well and what's going off in there. And we were like, oh, let's just do this on Monday, and then we can get everybody else's wonderful comments on there as well. That's what we're thinking. So quick look at who's in the chat. We've got Moogie Pie saying hey yo. Coleman's in there. Don't type too loud, Coleman. Daryl is in there saying evening all. Sam Stocks was in and out again. What have we got? Sky Stunties. They're looking brill, says Daryl. I assume he's talking to you, Coleman.
He might have.
He might have. Okay, you've gone a bit quiet, by the way. I don't know why. Your volume's a little bit low, but maybe not. I don't know. It seemed it to me, but I'll let everybody on the chat say... Thank you. I'll let everybody else on the chat say whether they can hear you okay or not. The volume level is showing good, but I'm just not 100% certain it's getting through to you guys. Maybe that's... who knows? Anyway, let's get back to the chat. We've got, well, basically, I think we're pretty much there. DJ the Lucky One saying hi. Frank Storms joining us. Dipimus Maximus. DJ the Lucky One. And a whole raft of people joining in the beep beep. And Amit is in there as well. Hello, fellow nerds and nerdettes. And CM is in there saying good evening. And indeed, we're joined by David Ellis as well, who we still owe a game. Let's just get that in the diary. I'm so terrible at organising these things. It's been a bit manic. For those of you who, you know, surprisingly, I have a personal life outside of Wargamer Online, which always gets in the way of things. So I'm in the middle of swapping jobs, basically. So I'm working my notice at the moment, and that's meant things are a little bit chaotic for me. But it's all good. It's all good. I'm just going to correct my camera angle a little bit. Hopefully that works. Daryl says volume finds. Friendly Neighborhood still says I want to see a re-release of Battlefleet Gothic. Oh, let's get started on Battlefleet Gothic. Poor old Coleman, of course, who's predominantly a fantasy player. So he's just going to have to behave himself and be patient during the 40k ruminations. I think that's the only way to do it. And Amit says, hi, Team WGO. Well, you're part of Team WGO, Amit. What's happened to your little... I'm sure we made Amit a moderator. Did someone revoke Amit's moderator capacity?
That would have been the almighty bearded one, if anybody.
Yeah, well, yeah, who knows? It wasn't me, definitely not. David says, even Warhammer TV got back to me quicker with my glorious victory last Friday. Oh, bless him. Well, you know, those guys have got plenty of time, you know. They're just sat around relaxing. Vaughan Killian, aha, finally caught a live one. How's it going, Phil? I'm fantastic, thank you, Vaughan. How are you, sir? And Rich Morton joining in saying hi, Phil. So there we are. Chat's caught up. We've got a bunch of stuff to be working through this week, so I suggest we get started. I think, you know, maybe we'll start with Age of Sigmar, loop around to 40k, go into specialist games and back round to Age of Sigmar at some point, just to keep Coleman happy. Otherwise, his grumpy beardness, well, he'll just lose it, won't he? So, yeah, starting with Age of Sigmar, then, guys. For me, I'm referring back to the artwork we saw of the 4 grand alliances, if you like. So we know, for instance, on those artworks, we saw Stormcast Eternals. If we take Order, Stormcast Eternals, and Fire Slayers. So why don't we start with Order and see where that leads us? And in the meantime, while you guys maybe could just take over the show for me for a few seconds, while I try and get something up on screen as well. That sounds good.
Go on,
So
Ralph.
who wants to start?
Go on, Ralph. You would love to see a new music chamber, wouldn't you?
Actually, no. Well, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I would have thought it would have been a pretty good, decent chance that we were going to see a new chamber. Somehow don't think we will. Because the guys, when they were at LVO, I think in one of the interviews that they gave there, they said something along the lines, there's not going to be a full, complete new chamber coming out. But I might be wrong on that, so please don't quote me on it. But I thought about it a little bit more, and it doesn't make sense because we've only seen the last chamber introduced with AOS 2. That is a bare 9 months ago, 8 months ago. Admittedly, we've seen already 3 battle terms for the Stormcast, and I think it would be overkill. And I think Games Workshop know that if they dump another battle term on us at this moment in time, when there is other factions that need exploring or updating first, I kind of think that they won't be going on that road.
Well, never done any harm to Corn, did it?
Well,
I mean, I think we've mentioned it before. And everybody knows by now. They do like to take the side step. As soon as you start feeling that a pattern emerges, they will do something a little bit, to break the combo basically. I've no idea about the Stormcast. Whether I don't think they need another one. I think there is a fun saturation as well. I mean, we all moan about new Stormcast chambers, don't we? Whether they listen to it, that's obviously a different story. For the Fire Slayers, they definitely need an update for a faction that does have a battle tome, but everything useful is actually in GHB. I would see it as a hot contestant. I've got still my little unbiased, obviously, but I've got my little theory that we might be seeing a cheeky KO battle tome.
Yeah.
And I still think about it. I still think about it on the basis that when the latest round of FAQs dropped, there was just nothing, absolutely nothing for the KO.
You're right.
And we all know. I mean, people say they're broken. They need really a retouch, definitely. And if there was nothing done on a scale of FAQ of small adjustments, then I would suspect that there's a big revamp coming.
Well, here's my thoughts on the KOs and Fire Slayers. We've seen with the Skaven release, we've seen Skaven being reunified in inverted commas to what we've had back in the old world. There is a small chance, admittedly, that we might be seeing a united Dwarven front, KO's Fire Slayers, in one battle tome, with updated rules and more synergies. within it, between those factions. It's conceivable.
It is, although as a dwarf player, I will hate that. I would absolutely hate that, because I don't think they, lore-wise, fluff-wise, compatible. Again, I'm feeling very, very fondly for that idea of Dispossessed being joined with maybe Arsenal, and then maybe Free Peoples as, one big, like, a kind of, they go together. They are the tissue that is building the new, human Duodin civilization. They build the cities. They kind of coexist in that world together. So there is, in terms of world building, there is context to it already, and we know it because we've had snippets. And KO and Fire Slayers don't fit in it. They lose cannons. For me, KO and Fire Slayers, like universal donos, they should be allowed to ally with any other faction, because they've got no ideology. One, Fire Slayers, they fight for Urgold. KO, they're the kind of people you show up to say, sir, my kitten is on a tree, and you've got this entry. Could you pick it up for me? And then, he goes, let's make a deal.
Are you seriously suggesting that the entire Fire Slayer army is based around air technology to rescue kittens from trees? I mean, I'm just...
No, KO.
Yeah, KO.
No, I mean, whatever, whatever your stance would be, whatever your need would be, they just, name your price.
Yeah, they're
happy to deal with anyone.
Yeah, true. I mean, to a degree, though, Fire Slayers are more or less the same, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the new Realm Slayer book with Gotrek in there, who's pretty disgusted by their lack of allegiance, if you like, and I can't remember the Fire Slayer character. I can't remember the name of the character that accompanies him on the initial adventures, who is somewhat ashamed by some of the allegiances the Fire Slayers have drawn over the over the previous years, if you like. Certainly ambiguous in terms of their morality. So
I mean, they've been. I think in the Battletome there was some hints that they've allied with, was it Iron Jaws, or some really going beyond the order, just because it fits their agenda.
Okay, well, we've taken a little bit of a sidetrack there because we've kind of drifted into the lore.
Yeah, but
in terms of the rules, though, in terms of seeing updated battle tomes for them, your argument is that they're unlikely to be featured in a Grand Alliance because they don't really ally themselves in that way. There is no permanent allegiance.
No,
is that what you're saying?
No, I would say that they. Like I said, I don't see the three Duodin factions joined together.
Yes,
even though it physiologically seems to fit, but lore-wise, I don't think it does. And again, KO and Fire Slayers, I think one aspect of them would be that they could potentially be like that universal ally within the order.
Yeah.
Because again, that fits their law.
Okay, before I want to come back to Ralph, I just want to quickly go down the chat and then bring Ralph in for a short time. So we've got a couple of things coming up on the chat. Besides David Ellis prompting me to remember to do a game with him at some point. Which we will do, mate. I apologise for that. Right, what have we got? Gareth 40k says, bring on the guts. Gutbusters, that's something Jack's looking forward to, and he's certainly hoping it's not part of an Ogre Alliance. He's quite happy with his Beast Claws sitting. Kind of doesn't really see them needing a Grand Alliance, but the Gutbusters have got some really nice models, so it would be nice to see them featured again. Scott is looking for new plastic guard units. With the fall of Cadia, I think a lot of people was hoping for that. The only thing I can say about that is if I was a guard player right now, there's so much available to you via Necromunda and the Scions and stuff. I know it's difficult to put an entire army together based on that, but you could certainly have a lot of fun with Catchetons based on Goliaths and stuff like that. If you were, and I know Scott doesn't mind chopping his plastic up at all, so you know, but I'm with you. It'd be nice to see the guard faction get new treatment, but we'll see. David, aren't they doing a new Chambers / host in White Dwarf at the moment? So I'm going to have to refer to Ralph on that one. Can we come back to that, though? Martin Dick says squats. Jim Wilson says, hey up, guys. How are we all tonight? We are good. I tell you what, I'm just going to bookmark where we're up to with Johnny Rockstar. Ralph, let's come back to you with... are you aware of this Chambers and host inside White Dwarf?
They're doing fluff bits on the Chambers in White Dwarf. Yes, that's correct. But so far they've not revealed any new Chambers. They're talking about the first one was the Fists of Hammerhall.
Right. Okay.
So the original ones, and I think in February's issue they were talking about basically the articles in White Dwarf are featured around hosts rather than Chambers. I don't think we're going to get a new one, and I hope we don't. I hope we're not going to get a new one. We might get some tweaks in the next GHB, points-wise and not lore-wise, for spells. Yeah, because the Stormcasts are getting pretty much boxed out of the competitive realm at the moment with all the new releases that were there. But what I would like to see is for Games Workshop to go back and look at some of the earliest ones, the battle terms that have already been released, like the Seraphon.
Seraphon spring to mind in particular. You know,
they're pretty good with GHB. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah, they're playable without a doubt. But it's nice to see the rules back into one book. You know, I think it's also interesting to note that, and it slipped through the net, didn't it? But Age of Sigmar went through a rebrand, a subtle rebrand, but a rebrand nevertheless. So it started off with the yellow gold. Now we're into this sort of more quality, full colour gold logo. So it's quite obvious there's a cut-off point between the old branding and old style and new branding and new style as well. So that was kind of that leap into, you know, the sort of second edition, if you like, and the brand came with it. So I do think if I was going to look at the list of books that I'd possibly you could expect to see updated, then you can go back to the ones that sit underneath the old brand. Because as daft as it sounds, Games Workshop are incredibly, you know, brand conscious. So when you put all of those books upon a shelf and they don't match up, you can see the old battle tomes. We know when a new line of model comes out, they get stripped off the shelf, they get repackaged. You know, this is plastic sent back to the factory and repackaged to hit the new brand. So Seraphon for me, along with Fireslayers and along with anybody else who's yet to enjoy the bright light of the new edition, you know, besides putting the rules, I mean, I'm a Fireslayer player, so I'm inside General's Handbook, I'm inside the Battle Tome, and I'm inside the Realms, and it's an absolute mess trying to, you know, just trying to play that army. If you want to refer to rules, I've got three books to balance. It's not the end of the world, but it's frustrating. Seraphon are similar, and on top of that as well, what we've seen is that commonality now. Jack talked about it a little bit in the Flesh Eater review we did, which was, you know, endless spells, and as soon as the endless spells come along, and there's one that dishes out mortal wounds, there's one that shuts down or boosts magic. You know, there's a pattern to those endless spells, but there are factions that only have access to the generic ones at this stage.
One faction that we all overlook is the Sylvaneth.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yes, and they had an early battle tome as well.
Yeah,
but
true.
I think what we might be looking at is, obviously we still have a few of those factions that only have their allegiance rules in GHB. Some of them are more popular than others, and I would guess that the ones that are not popular, they might still be confined to the GHB purgatory for another few years. I don't think they're gonna go by whatever's left. Let's do that. I think they are gonna be looking at what is being played, what is being popular in tournaments, and even though the Fire Slayers do have already a book, early book, but they do have a book, they might see a refresh much sooner because they are popular on the tables.
True.
Than a lot of things that still have only 2 pages in GHB, but they're not very competitive and they don't get a shout out a lot.
I think I know one thing we talked about previously, Coleman, and I think you were there as well, Ralph, where we were saying Fire Slayers, despite bringing the rules together, which would be a benefit in its own right and a bit of an update to the rules, with, of course, I think most Fire Slayers would. Nobody's arguing that Fire Slayers aren't competitive. I played a game against crikey, who was I up against? I'm having to think now. Crike. Seraphon. I was playing Seraphon. So this weekend's game was Fire Slayers versus Seraphon. Jack fielded a pretty damn powerful 1,000-point Seraphon army. It was meant to just be a test game. He was trying some rules out. By the end of the game, he'd summoned 650 points. So this is a 1,650-point Seraphon list, of which I beat with a 1,000-point Fire Slayer list. So I don't think anybody's arguing that Fire Slayers can't be competitive. But guess what was on the table? Just all foot troops, all based around, there's no way I'd have survived past turn 3 if I'd have blown 200 odd points onto a magma drop. So I think we all want to see that magma drop sorted out, even if that means at the cost of balancing some other areas of the battle tome. I think at the same time, though, we talked about, wouldn't it be nice to have an alternative cavalry unit in there? Something a little bit mid-size, a fire drake. I
would love that, like baby salamanders.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only thing I'd say on that is there's 1,000,001 Fire Slayer. I'd love it, by the way. You forget, I always want new models anyway, so let's just get that out the way. But I think there's 1,000,001 Fire Slayer players out there with a hell of a lot of magma drops still on sprue, because it became the most effective way of buying them. So why not make the Rune Suns the possibility of being battle line in certain circumstances, around a formation or something like that?
Well,
Rune Suns on magma drop, that is,
Yeah, if I remember well, the Rune Sun actually doesn't unlock any battle lines right now. No. So if you take a Rune Sun as a general, your only battle line options are 3 units of Volkites.
But I'd love to see the Rune Sun maybe as that unit we're talking about. Make the Rune Father far more powerful, if you like, and leave the Rune Sun where it is, but maybe a dip on points so you can kind of see it. I'd like to feature my Fire Slayer army with a Rune Father, 2 Rune Suns either side of him, and a Rune Smiter on Magma Drop backed up behind it, and then a bunch of foot troops marching across the table. I'd love to see that, just from a how it would look point of view,
And also because that's how the lodges are organized.
Yeah.
And you would love to be able to reflect it. With even with KO, you can argue that you can have smaller barracks that might be organized in a different way than the big barracks. But the lodges, there's always going to be a Rune Father at the head of the lodge.
Yeah.
There's going to be at least one Rune Sun, and you've got that structure pretty well established.
Sure. I want to jump on a little bit because we're 23 minutes into the show and we've basically talked about our favourite faction for now. Yeah. Let's just quickly look at Johnny Rockstar. I want to see what will be left of the High Elves, and I want new Phoenix Lords for 40k. 2 thumbs from me. Vote upon either of those. I'd love to see the High Elves. We'll maybe come back to High Elves. I hope Specialist Games will be in focus for 2019. Take centre stage. But Slanesh is the big elephant in the room. David Ellis says, I want to see my Haitian Angeloc High Elves. Haitian Angelic High Elves, I think is what that's meant to say. And it kind of does say it. It's just gone behind my microphone, so I couldn't read it. Stills says, I heard rumours that Iron Jaws are getting an update, Battle Tome, regular Aurochs getting a Battle Tome. Also heard Slaves of Darkness and Everchosen combined into a Battle Tome. If those things are true, then they are all good news. All good news. Vaughn comes in, I really need to get back into more hobby, but school has been so busy. I will admit that making terrain in-game engines for class reminds me of digital hobby, so it's not all that bad. I'm assuming Vaughn is doing a game development then at school. That's no bad thing. Good luck with that, Vaughn. Maybe into 3D sculpting, you never know. DJ the Lucky One, agreed. KO Fire Slayers don't fix together as much as they would do with Tree Elves. Realm Slayer was fantastic, says 12th Neve. Agreed, I loved it. I found it difficult to listen to in the car, and I sort of talked about that because it was the, you know, when it's acted out rather than just read. It's sometimes a little bit, you need to be able to sit and listen to it. Or is it just me trying to concentrate on my driving? Dwarven race and human free people would lend themselves to shared ethos fuss-wise and game-wise as they did in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. There's no shared ethos with KOs and Fire Slayers. All agreed. I'm making guard units with Gene Stealer cult bodies and Orlok heads and arms, says Johnny Rockstar. What a great looking army that's going to be. Let's see some pictures up on the Facebook group, please. Johnny Moogie Pie says it's rules to 4 battalions per issue. So there you go.
He's
there are
talking about the storm hosts.
Yeah, the storm hosts and the White Dwarf. So right, okay, that's interesting. We maybe check those out in a future show. David, it would be kind of nice to see General's Handbook armies all updated and future General Army updates the way to test the next batch of releases. I 100% agree. Go on, Ralph.
Can I just jump in there? I think they've done something very interesting in the latest equivalent for 40k when they've released the better rules for the Sisters of Battle. And I think that might be a recipe that might be working for some of the armies that didn't get much love yet.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it would stir interest in the player community into those units, and it would then certainly, from the feedback, signal to GW whether it's worth it for them to produce a battle tome or not. So
I don't like it. I don't like it because when God wants to be nasty, he makes your wishes come true. And I don't believe in the collective wisdom of fandom. So too much feedback from the nerds is never a good thing.
Calvin. Of all people, democracy, mate, democracy. Right, I'm going to move on.
An adult waiting in.
Furious George says, hey, gang, sorry I'm late. Hope everyone is well. We are indeed. Thank you very much. Ralph's got a little bit of a headache. I've got a head cold. So behind these smiles and soft complexion is a raging headache myself. So I've had a head cold all day, and you might be able to just hear it a little bit in my voice. There's not a lot of capacity to breathe at the moment, but yeah, other than that, I'm well. And on the scale of things, there's very little to complain about. Right, okay, Amit says, book out of date, collections looking complete on yourself, solution, go digital. Well, you know, that's the thing is, Amit, you know, I've got the digital Fire Slayers book, and whilst it gets updated with the amends, what doesn't get added in is the general handbook content and, you know, some of the other stuff that I'd like to see within the book. So it helps, but it only helps for iOS players, I believe, as well, because iOS get the updates. But Ralph, am I right in thinking that
Android don't get
EPUBs don't? No.
EPUBs don't. No. And
crazy business. I don't get that.
I've had an exchange with them about it, and they said they would do it when they got the time to.
Here's what I would like to see from Games Workshop on that front. I would like to see a subscription model where you don't have to buy battle tomes, but you pay a subscription and you have access to electronic version of battle tomes. So if I want to check a little bit of lore on Sylvaneth or, you know, someone else, I don't have to buy a full book.
You know what? I think I'd like to take your idea, steal it, and improve upon it. I got the Gene Stealer book. Brilliant, fantastic, love it. 2 weeks later, you know, we've got the FAQs are out, and I've got to go through my book and start scribbling all over it to correct essentially a combination of typos and balancing issues. So why not do both? Why not do a subscription-based system? So new battle tomes and new codexes are released to the subscribers. You get to provide digital format only. You get to provide feedback to it. It goes through the round of FAQs. Typos get corrected, and then you can made to order, for want of a better word, digital print versions of the codexes or something like that. You know. So in other words, you can say, actually, you know, now it's stabilized. The FAQs have been done. People have ironed out the issues. Essentially, it's been thoroughly proofread. And I don't think FAQs are just about proofreading issues. Sometimes they are, but a lot of the time it's rule clarification as well. That's what you see in the FAQ. So, you know, I get that that's quite difficult to iron out before it goes to press. But don't send it to press then. You know, put it to a subscription-based community. Send it to press after a month. I'd be okay with that. If I'm an absolute fan of the digital books, which of the printed books, which I am, I love a shelf full of books. It's fantastic.
I mean, whatever they churn out as, you know, those special collector's edition, he'll sell.
Yeah,
he'll sell because these things people buy to have on a shelf and cherish on a shelf and keep it on a shelf, and it doesn't matter what's printed inside, hardly. So they will sell anyway.
12 Neef wants magma golems for his fire slayers. I'm just cutting in with the chat now.
Yeah,
I've got to keep the. We need to keep the discussion moving forward. Female fire slayers, half brew matrons. Oh my goodness me! Love to ally systems freed up too, but KO would be like order allies only. I can do it in free play. So that's alliances with Caradron Overlords across Order, I think is DJ the Lucky One saying. Outside of Order. Daryl says, I want them to explore the realms a bit more. I want to see grey-skinned ogres from Ooglu with glowing eyes and fire bellies spewing green flame. Other than that, White Dwarf is the paint schemes all the time. We did see some of that in White Dwarf, and it was extremely refreshing to see. So much so, I'm considering repainting my Fire Slayers. Which I can't believe I even toyed with the idea. I was like, you know what? I think I could make them more fiery. Scott says GW should bring back Rough Riders so they can use the new GSC bikes as a base. Oh, I don't think Sam's in the chat right now. He's on about joining in. He's loving those new Gene Stealer Cult bikes. He was around my house the other day, drooling over the sprues. So expect to see something from him on those bikes at some point in the future. Oh, well, a lot of people agreeing to that. Moogie, they are doing that in White Dwarf slowly, but I'd happily welcome more in-depth lore on realms, how it affects those that live there. Agreed. Hi, guys. Question on the Wolf Codex. Hi, guys. Pointing question. The Wolf Codex total misprint. Absolutely, Paul. Spot on. That was a little bit of a grand stage whoopsie, wasn't it? What happens with Deepkin in Akshi, for example? They barely touch the Darkling Covens operating from Strayas. It's endless. You're absolutely right. I think they're hoping that the hobbyists, to a degree, invent some of that. And, you know, they do that in their paint schemes and all the rest. DJ the Lucky One thumbing up the subscription. Still like to get the odd book. Rules only, I think, says Amit. Maybe for the subscription. Agreed, maybe. So you buy the book for the fluff, but once they've ironed out the rules, because that's the bit that changes, really. So 4 weeks of rule revision and feedback follow through the subscribers, followed by the ability to order a book with a rules section at the back would be lovely. New Flesh Eater Courts book schemes, realms, paint schemes, and then practice on previous stories. Absolutely, we talked about that in one of the previous videos. Aren't there Rough Riders in the index you can use? And hi, comrade from Paris, says Nicholas, rather. Right, that's the chat caught up, and we are 21:34. So Ralph, you've been alarmingly quiet because Coleman's been in his element talking about Age of Sigmar. Gonna bang you straight onto the main screen, so show's now yours, Ralph. Should we talk 40k for a bit? Coleman, do you want a little nap?
Oh, go on. Go on. I'll make myself comfortable.
Don't fall asleep just yet.
Let's turn to 40k for a while then. I'm super happy 40k player at the moment. I've got my Gene Stealer cult release. I have been lavished with endless new models. I'm so happy. They're all wonderful. The little buggy is amazing. I've got an expansion of rules. Got a hell of an FAQ that's just popped out today. Nothing too surprising in that FAQ, actually. You know, and nothing that's made me go, well, I don't want to play Gene Stealer Cult anymore at all. So I'm pretty happy with that. But outside of the Gene Stealer Cult, what are you thinking? Yeah.
Well, I think we're 6 days away from the end of Vigilus. That's the starting point for me. I've watched the trailer today, and it's obvious. You know, we know who's coming. Abaddon's coming, that's for sure. And I'd like to see an expansion on that whole part of the Chaos Space Marines. There is a codex art for the Chaos Space Marines, which is, I think it was the second or third codex that was out after the 8th edition was released. And I would like to see him expand on that, because there is so much in the lore that came that you could bring over from 30k into 40k, because we all know those Chaos Space Marines, they live like in a bubble. In the warp, and they're pretty much the same Space Marines that fought in the Heresy. And if they now all of a sudden put foot on Vigilus, I think there is a lot of room for expansion. Of course, we've seen some of the new models that are on the horizon, and me personally, I just love the aesthetics of the Chaos Space Marines, the Death Guard and the Chaos Space Marines. I love the aesthetics of those two factions, and for me, that's what I would like to see expanded with, a couple of new models here and there. Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. So, what do you do? Do you do any of the Chaos factions for 40k at the moment?
I've got a whole Death Guard army that's waiting to be painted. I think you saw that.
I completely forgot about that, actually.
It's sitting there waiting to be painted. Well, it's actually undercoated. I don't know who. Thanks, Liam. If you're in the, just a little shout out to you, buddy. Yeah, Death Guard, definitely. And I am seriously contemplating doing Chaos Space Marines, dabbling with it on Kill Team first, and then who knows? Probably is going to work out the same as with the AdMech, dabbling with it in Kill Team first, and then blowing it out to 2,000 points of AdMech that are sitting waiting to be built and painted. So, yeah.
Well, Kill Team has that way of hooking you in, doesn't it? I mean, that's definitely the thing. So, from you, 40k 2019 were less than a quarter into the year. I started to do a breakdown of the year, really, when I was thinking about this. And this probably has relevance back towards the age of Sigmar. What we tend to see is 1 month of Sigmar, 1 month of 40k, 1 month of Sigmar. And scattered in between those, you might see a specialist release or something like that. When you tally that up, you've probably got, we've got what, 10 months left of the year. That's 5, what I would argue is, big releases, for want of a better word, 5 big releases for each of the gaming areas. So 40k and Age of Sigmar. What we saw, interestingly enough, with Flesh Eater Corpse, I remember being on a chat and saying, I can't see 2 battle tomes dropping in the same month. It happened. So there you go. It can happen. So it does make you wonder whether that's, you know, doesn't limit it then. If we've got 5 major 40k releases, but we can see some multiple overlap with, say, some of the old factions. But really, by the time you drop Chaos in there, that's a lot of those releases probably taken up, is it? Do you think? What else are we going to see outside of Chaos and Vigilus?
I think we're going to see either something from the Tau, because we haven't seen much for them apart from the Codex. There's not been any new models as far as I'm aware.
No.
There's probably going to be a couple of Eldari stuff, although they have gotten a lot of love in the second quarter or third quarter last year.
Yeah.
So my bet would be on the Tau, to be honest. And we might be seeing something for the Orcs, because the range is getting a bit old, in inverted commas. And we've just seen the release before Christmas of the Codex, but we've not really seen any new models for them. So we might be in for a couple of model or unit updates on the Org side there. But my money is on the Tau, to be honest.
So I'm pretty certain that Vigilus was that's ran for what? Vigilus has ran for 3 months. Is that correct?
About 4 months, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was 80 days before it kicked off, and then there was a prelude with the Org invasion and all of that. So it was 3.5, 4 months around that.
And I'm pretty damn certain somewhere back in the mists of time it said that Vigilus was a 2-parter. So we're obviously ticking over from first part into second part. If that's a 3-4 month release cycle, that will take us into arguably the middle of the year. We're getting into June, aren't we?
Well,
you know, Warhammer Fest fits in May.
Yeah.
It seems about right to kind of turn it, you know, if we've seen all of the big news around Chaos leading up until May, assuming we've seen all the big news around Chaos leading up until May, we're going into Warhammer Fest with some announcement, aren't we, generally?
That's where I've got my questions. I mean, don't forget, we've got a pretty big tournament coming up in the US. Adepticon, not tournament, sorry, convention coming up in the US. And if GW do anything like what they've done in previous years, there will be some big news coming out of Adepticon. Whether they're going to be 40k related or not is a question. But we'll see some stuff at Adepticon coming out.
Yeah, true.
And I could put my money on it that we see either some extension on the Primaris range at that moment in time, because Vigilus coming to an end next week, or that we're going into the directions that I've mentioned before, that we're looking at possibly Tau or other of the other Xenos races coming into the frame.
Yeah, I just think I add up what's going off at LVO. You saw Xenos completely dominated, predominantly driven around Eldar and a few other stuff. You saw Chaos featured a little bit. You saw nothing in Space Marines. I just can't see right now GW driving Xenos for a while. I get what you're saying. It feels like there's room for Tau to drop back in. I agree with you. But right now, I can just see this Black Legion release really running, and interspersed with that, probably an extension of the Primaris range to the point where it's more of a standalone army. You're not needing, the old Space Marine models. Calgar, the change of Calgar into a Primaris Marine was seen as the start of the end times for the traditional Marine models, wasn't it?
Oh, they've made it clear in the law that the Primaris is becoming the new norm.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they will phase the old Space Marines out.
So it seems to make sense that we see, the central narrative of 40k has always been the Imperium versus Chaos. Xenos is meant to be a distraction at best. I'm a Xenos player, so I love to see Xenos stuff going off. Don't get me wrong at all. But it's just, it feels like that central narrative needs more focus. We've seen a lot of Primaris releases, but they're far from being a standalone army in many respects. there's quite a lot of unit choices, and they are quick to make their own jokes about another new lieutenant. But look, I've just noticed that the chat's pretty much at a full screen before I can catch up with it, so I'm just going to jump back into this though. David Ellis says, though I'm a physical book guy, I've got every battle tome on my bookshelf. Nice. Age of Sigmar app covers most of the rules. Good point, of course. And you're quite happy to use that.
Which is subscription driven.
Pardon?
Which is subscription driven.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to new Chaos models, says Johnny Rockstar. Army of Ambots coming from DJ the Lucky One. It's a beautiful looking model, without a doubt. Abaddon is not coming, says Amit, and then goes on to talk about a bunch of nonsense. Kill Team is the gateway vehicle for our plastic crack addiction. Paul Collier says Primaris Phase 2. It's a little bit what we've been talking about. He's probably been screaming at the screen for the last 10 minutes saying, read my comments out. Close combat, transports, etc. Agreed. Primaris Terminators devastated. You know it's going to happen, says Amit. Paul Collier comes back with need better transport. The repulsor isn't great. Well, that could be addressed with rules, but I'm hear what you're saying. Right, August is usually big releases, isn't it? Any thoughts on what this year's big thing is going to be? Well, you know what? Can we come back to that? Because you've suggested Slaanesh, David, and maybe that's a good way to round back towards the end of the show, is to wake Coleman up and see if he wants to talk about Slaanesh inside Age of Sigmar for a while. Amit, Black Legion being released very soon. Warhammer 40k 9th edition will be on the cards for 2019. Nope. I wouldn't say so. I don't know, 220, and even then I think what we're seeing is this evolving platform rather than major release now, aren't we?
Good bet.
Unless they go over to D20, which we talked about a while ago.
Yeah.
Just to be completely controversial. Tony says, Tony Lusardi, it's nice to see Bill Bailey has joined Wargamer Online. Who could he be referring to? Poor Colin.
I tried, but I actually can't figure out.
You know, it'd be really nice is if you responded.
You've got the hair. I've got the beard.
It'd be nice if you kind of responded accompanied by a keyboard. That'd be really good. A little song. Paul Collier Primaris return to face Abaddon as Gilliman isn't there and Calgar can't match him. So another Primarch return. Sorry. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I'm standing by with Gilliman is the avatar of the Emperor. And I don't think we need another Primarch, as unpopular as that opinion is. And no doubt I'll be proved terribly wrong at some point. But, I just don't... Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I ought to put €10 on that with Ralph, maybe. Frank Storm, going to guess Sisters of Battle will be the big fall release. Good point. I do believe Russ return as the Emperor's Executioner. Can't stay, back to work, says Jared. Okay, mate. Jared Winnie. Thanks for dropping by, though. Good to see you. Frank Storm says no, and I don't know what that means. Bill Bailey doesn't have a beard of that magnitude. Okay, so right, coming back to the chat then. Let's focus on the big release of the year then. What's going to be the big release? 40k's got to be Abaddon, isn't it?
The Sisters.
And of course the Sisters. What am I talking about? Are Sisters going to be as big as you think they're going to be? You know, when Knights hit, Knights was a major release for 40k, wasn't it? And Games Workshop were blown away like, oh my, we've nailed it, I think Knights took them by surprise, and they knew it was going to be good, but how good it was just blew them away. Is that going to happen with Sisters?
No. Short answer, no. Sisters for me has been always in 40k. It's been a market. There's a group of players out there that absolutely love the Sisters. and then they've been whining for them to be released in plastic. Shouldn't forget that we've got.
I think whining's an extreme word.
Asking for them. Excuse my French.
They've been ignored for like 25 years.
Sorry. Gotta say,
I think a reasonable request probably falls into mind.
It was. Don't get me wrong, but they've still been quite ferocious. Can't speak tonight.
That's fandom.
Vocal.
Yeah, they've been quite vocal about it, and they've listened, which is a good thing, because they've listened. But I don't think that we're going to get that they're going to be such a huge commercial success as they would like them to be, because I still think, well, they're going to be beautiful models, but the range is just not that big that it will draw a lot of new players to them. I think the big release that we're going to see this year is the biggest release this year is going to be definitely going to be a 40k release. That is for sure, because we've had AOS last year, and they sort of alternate in years with big releases. I don't think it's going to be 9th edition, although Frank Storm seems to be thinking so. It's going to be 9th edition.
Well, I mean, interesting enough, David is coming back as well. Emperor's Willing was 2019, and that's absolutely true. We're seeing concept models at the moment, and initial renders and stuff. And if any of the interviews on the official podcast or anything to go by, you're generally looking at a 2 to 3 year cycle. So sometimes those conceptual models are a long time on the table before they actually get printed, machined and produced. So maybe it is ambitious to expect it inside 2019. Maybe that's the Christmas release. I think it's probably safe to say it's not an August release, isn't it?
I think they're going to be the cyberpunk of wargaming, coming when ready.
There's that.
I think the whole point is I like Sisters. I like the fluff. I like the rules. I like the new renders of them. So I like the whole concept of them. That's the thing. My question is whether, like I say, that I'm not saying they'll remain fringe. I just don't think they'll necessarily be a major faction. And part of me is, we had the Sisters of Silence, and I know it was only one unit, but I didn't really see a massive take-up of them either, if you know what I mean. People went with the Custodes. You generally didn't see the Sisters accompanying them. I've not seen much of those on the table, but it could be wrong.
Because it was only one unit.
Yeah, I suppose, and you shouldn't judge it by that. Tony says the amount of women I want to know that want to pay Plastic Sisters of Battle in 40k is intense. Well, that's great news then, because let's get more players into it and doing it. We've also got David saying, if you want to play Sisters, surely wait until Q1 2020. There'll be the dime a dozen on eBay once half the buyers discovers they don't like how the army plays. Well, that does happen, doesn't it? Definitely. Okay, where are we at? We are 8 minutes to, and we said we'd probably just roundhouse a little back into Age of Sigmar. We haven't really talked about any of the specialist games. My head is pounding, so I don't think we're going to do a late show tonight. Maybe we'll do another show on the specialist games and focus on the specialist games, I think. But let's talk a little bit about Slaanesh, Age of Sigmar. Are we going to see Slaanesh in 2019?
Yes,
I think so. I think there's been, so we've already had the new models. Before that, there's been already, a long trickle of leaks, and this stage has been set, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've had, what was it called? The box set. I can't see it at the moment.
Yeah.
So we saw a couple of new models.
The last one.
And I think that would pretty much confirmed to everybody, despite despite the naysayers, Slaanesh is, as a faction, far from dead. We'll see further development. If we're going to see Slaanesh, we're going to see Slaanesh accompanied by the High Elves, aren't we? That's what I think.
I think it's going to be, it's going to be again, a box, maybe something, the size of Soul Wars.
Yeah. kind of following the Soul Wars campaign. So as we come out of Soul Wars, Slaanesh gets released, and we see a new sort of rise of chaos. Because I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that in the lore of the
I think there will be further consequences of the Necroquake.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
But it is interesting. We moved from the Realm Gate Wars. I'm pretty certain there was a bit in the middle. Then we moved into the Soul Wars. You know, so at some point that is going to come to an end, and there is going to be a new wars. And of course, the Age of Chaos was pretty much, well, the Age of Chaos came to an end at the Realm Gate, the successful delivery, if you like, of the Realm Gate Wars, wasn't it? The Age of Chaos is over now, isn't it? This is the Age of Sigmar. So inside that Age of Sigmar, the only thing we've really seen so far is the Realm Gate Wars and the Soul Wars, yeah?
Yeah.
So there's got to be an evolution at some point, and you know, I suppose I'm thinking like a 40k player that chaos has to be central to the narrative, and it doesn't really, does it? With fantasy, yeah.
No, we've left that in the old world, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
That was that axis was very prominent. Now the stage is far more open.
I mean, what we've got with Age of Sigmar now is we've got a setting that is, I mean, you've got uncounted realms. There's 8 realms we know of, but that doesn't mean there only has to be 8 realms. There can be more.
What stops GW coming up with a new Grand Alliance?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, that's the beauty about Age of Sigmar lore-wise at this moment, at this point in time, and that will be driving, or could be potentially driving the game, is that we see developments in lore that neither you, nor Phil, nor I, nor Coleman, or anybody out there is even thinking about at this moment in time.
True.
Because they have got a host of lore writers out there, and if you listen to the Stormcast podcast that they put out, they regularly talk about how vast and open this setting is, and there's not, it doesn't stop them from, you know, bad Stormcast. Where do you fit them in? They will, they eventually they will turn bad, because, you know, every time they're being reborn, they lose part of their soul. So
yeah. Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah, yes and no. Don't think so. No, not quite the same thing. Not quite the same.
I think, you know, I'm on the fence with that. You know, that obviously that in the stories, and I can't remember which, it might be the Hammeral ones, where they kind of introduced the Sacrosanct Chambers, and of course their primary mission was to solve that problem, wasn't it? And of course now they're not really focused on solving that problem. They're out there fighting in the Soul Wars, so it's
happening to them too.
Distraction. Of course, yeah, they themselves are suffering from that.
So you're getting bad sorcerers.
Yeah, you know, and yeah. I just don't know whether it becomes a, you know, you see the Sigmarite, no, that's not the wrong word, the actual soldiers, what are they called, the Stormcast Eternal. You see such Stormcast Eternal characters, if you like, their souls get stolen by Nagash, for instance, and repurposed, but when those corrupted souls, for want of a better word, are repurposed, it changes their form. I just don't see corruption of a Stormcast itself as you'd see it in a chaos, you know, heretical Stormcast faction.
Agreed.
No.
Agreed. But that's why we're gonna, you know, we could be getting a new faction, or a new Grand Alliance.
But then again, you know, because again, there's a point that I think people need to keep making. Order in Age of Sigmar does not mean good.
Exactly.
And yes, there is. I think you know, even just the Soul Wars itself, there's so much potential in there, because there's so much going on in that world with the souls. Just on the back of the Soul Wars, the initial the start of the whole arc. We've had Daughters of Cain, and we have either you know, sprouting out two new factions, which were just, you know, a little sprouts of this big arc. There could be countless more, because there are powerful forces, you know, fighting for those souls, and a lot of things can happen with them. It's not just, you know, it's not going to be just between Sigmar and Nagash. There are other players. Just that one idea that they could carry on with it, you know, and have offshoots for another couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh,
Easily.
decades.
Easily.
Decades.
Okay.
There is.
Well, maybe that's a good place to leave it. We're at 10 o'clock. We can have a quick catch up on the chat, but you know, I think Amit's come in talking about Tau and Kroot. Kroot Vespid would be very cool, but you know, I think you'll see those on a smaller level. But we've seen new models, which is nice and exciting. Slanesh follow-up box set, would they'd be crazy not to do that. Slanesh escapes. High elves have more to do. Agreed. Stormcast could turn to death since Nagash takes their souls, says 12 Neef, or wants their souls at least. And DJ the Lucky One saying agreed, room for more, it's great. 12 Neef, they could go destruction, so they could go crazy and just want to destroy. And Daryl says, I reckon they would go the route of tyrants and pirates as they're corrupted. Evil doesn't necessarily mean chaos. And David coming in with new Stormcast units, the Soulless. A unit of mindless golem creatures who attack indiscriminately, just to see what Stormcast do lore-wise when they see the end effect of Reforging.
Very, very Sigmar, I think, to do. I mean,
yeah.
He would be so happy with it.
Right, Amit says good night, everyone. Vaughan is saying good night. I'm going to say good night to everybody. And thank my two wonderful guests over here. Oh, pointed in the right direction. That's always a winner. Thank you very much for Coleman and Ralph for joining me tonight.
Very much.
Thanks for having us.
We'll hope to see you all. It's been lovely. Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all again next week. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.